All right, so now we are officially live. Thank you all for joining us today, especially Asakura Robinson. We're so excited to hear from you all in our next meet and greet this semester. So I wanted to introduce Principal Katie, and we have Claire on the call as well. So I will go ahead and turn it over to y'all. Brianna will be joining us from Asakura Robinson as soon as she is available.
Thanks so much, Julie. So sorry that Brianna is joining us late. We're gonna get started without her, and I'm gonna do her parts instead. So hold on one second. Let me just share my screen. Hope everyone's doing well and recovering from our week of craziness. Hold on one second. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. All right, let me get y'all back on my other screen. Maybe not. All right. All right. So my name is Katie Coyne. I'm a principal based in our Austin office, and I'm an alumni of UTSOA. So thanks so much for asking us to do this meet and greet. We're super excited to share what we do with you, and very passionate, obviously. That's something I think that folks are drawn to at our firm, is that we're very mission driven in the work that we do. And I think you'll see that as we talk about some of our projects. So our mission is the aims and values of our company, which is a typo, but Asakura Robinson is a planning, urban design, and landscape architecture firm dedicated to strengthening environments and empowering communities through innovation, engagement, stewardship, and an integrated design process. Our values are core values that impact our vision, culture, and overall philosophy. So we value the ability for the public to participate in our projects, creating places that encourage social collaboration and our staff's deep engagement in our communities. We really value creativity in our process, materials, technology, collaborations, approach, and design palette. And then we also really value our diverse workplace and communities and seek to optimize existing community-based and ecological resources. So a little bit about our history. So right now we have offices in Houston, which is our original office, founded in 2004 by KG Asakura and Margaret Robinson. Really started out focused on landscape architecture. Austin and New Orleans came next, and that happened in the early teens to 2015 when New Orleans opened. And that's really when our planning practice started to grow. The planning studio was added in 2011. That really is kind of critical for the growth of our firm, because right now, especially, we're seeing this value of doing this very interdisciplinary type of work where we're crossing practice areas between landscape architecture, urban design, urban ecology, and urban planning. In 2018, our Minneapolis office was opened. Just this past year, at the end of the year, we announced Seattle and San Antonio offices. And then we're starting to grow as a national practice. So 2021 is seeing growth in many of the places that we don't even have offices. For instance, we have projects in South Carolina, Nevada, Missouri, New York, and Pennsylvania. I'm helping to lead a project in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which is their community climate plan. So we're really growing beyond just those core markets where we've been around a long time and that we like to call home. Like we said, we also value a diverse practice, and we want to make sure that we have folks from all the different communities that we're trying to do work with and for. We think that representation is super important. That includes, anytime we're working in a community in Houston that is primarily a community of color. That includes, for instance, we're working on the Montrose Livable Center study, and that's seen as kind of the gayborhood of Houston. And so as an out queer person, I'm leading that, cultivate a very queer-led team for that project. And so making sure that we're working to include that diversity in staffing, that it aligns and honors the communities with which we are working with is a really core value for us. Office culture. And Claire, let me know if you want to expand on this at all. But I think the other thing that we love about this practice is that we're very empathetic. We try to be as supportive as possible of our staff. Just going back to last week or 2 weeks ago, we closed all of our Texas offices. We want people to focus on health and safety and mental health and wellness in times of crisis. I think that in terms of, design practices, there's a lot of firms out there and a culture that can be kind of toxic in the design and planning world, that we really try to find ways to get out of that system of overtime and overwork being part of the goal. Not to say there isn't a late night every once in a while that, we're trying to hit a deadline or something, but we really try to hammer home the importance of work-life balance in this firm. Claire, anything you want to add about office culture?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think, we've been developing ways to kind of continue staying connected to each other, especially as we've been distant. One of the things that we do that I really enjoy is weekly, we have a presentation where we share research and project ideas and get to have feedback from all the offices. And I think that that's been a really nice piece in terms of staying connected, getting feedback, and collaborating.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, and then just a few other things also that have to do both with office culture and just the way we operate for our staff. We really value growth, and so professional development has always been something that we've seen as very important and that we put money toward. And so each staff has funding each year to pursue professional development activities that could be supporting their certifications, going to conferences, going to trainings. We have some people who use that to do drawing classes or Spanish classes, buying, materials that, like books or field equipment that they want to use that will help expand their professional development. We also, recognize that it's not just about your professional growth, but, that your health and wellness is directly related to you feeling bought in and really valuing being a part of our team. And so health and wellness is something that we've increasingly put more focus on. Again, everything from work-life balance in the way we function to actually funding for each staff member a wellness allowance each year. So last year I bought a meditation cushion and helped, pay for some of my workout classes that I was doing before COVID. But specifically looking at how we can support emotional and physical fitness. And then lastly, again, trying to make sure we're staying connected during COVID, during quarantine. We have not been back to the office since March, except for, a couple folks who will go in on a rotating basis to get a little break from roommates or, not being super productive at the house. But no one is formally back in the office, but, and we've been working really hard in the last year, and we want to make sure people are taking enough time for themselves, especially with this weird blurry line between your personal life and your work life when you're doing all of that in your house. And so Flex Fridays is something that we've done in the past, summer Fridays that we're doing at least through COVID, if not in the long term. But this is something where every other Friday, folks are off as long as they've completed their previous 80 hours from the last 2 weeks. So that is something that we also love about this place. So I'm going to take a break really quick. Sorry, I didn't realize I was emceeing. So I'm a little bit on the fly here because I'm also on vacation and I'm like so in vacation mode. So Brianna's on the call now, but now that we have all three of us, let's just take a second to just do individual introductions, and then we can jump into some of these projects that we want to talk about. Does that sound good?
Yeah, and thank you, Katie, for being here on vacation. We appreciate it.
This is after I said all that work-life balance stuff. I committed to this so long ago, I didn't even have vacation planned, and it's literally the one meeting I'm doing this week. So it was important.
We are incredibly grateful.
Well, thanks. All right, well, let's just do individual introductions and then we'll jump in. Does that sound good? Okay. So like I said, my name is Katie Coyne. I'm based in our Austin office, and just a little more background about me. My undergrad's in wildlife ecology, but I also did a ton of women's studies and sociology and education related courses in undergrad. And so I've always loved that kind of human nature connection. I'm a returned Peace Corps volunteer, a previous high school teacher, and then I actually went to UT for the dual degree program in sustainable design. and community and regional planning. I lead a practice at Asakura Robinson called the Urban Ecology Studio, and I'll explain more about that when we get to my projects. And then I most of my work, I lead some of our national work for the Urban Ecology Studio around climate resilience and parks and open space, and ecotourism are some of the national ones. Lots of local parks system planning that's focused on health and equity. And then I'm super plugged in and involved in Austin. So I co-chaired the steering committee for the Austin Climate Equity Plan. That was a volunteer thing that I did. And then I also vice chair the Environmental Commission for the City of Austin and the Joint Sustainability Committee for the City of Austin. So lots of volunteer plugged in, things going on in Austin, in addition to this practice that I lead and this firm that I love. So I will pass it off to Claire to introduce herself.
Oh, great. Thanks, Katie. I'm Claire Edelman-Heath. I'm seeing some familiar faces from the career fair last week. So thank you. Thanks just to everyone for coming. It's awesome to see this many people. I am a senior associate in the Austin office. I'm a landscape architect. I am a UT grad. I did a Bachelor of Science in Architectural Studies from UT, and then went on to get my master's in landscape architecture from Harvard's Graduate School of Design. And I've had a chance to work in a number of firms over the years, and happily made my way to Asakura Robinson because it just had, I think the values just really called to me in terms of sustainable design and community-based values, and having those as a framework for implementation. So I focus on a lot of the implementation-oriented projects in the office, but have a chance to get to collaborate, especially with Katie, who's in the Urban Ecology Studio, on some vision plans and frameworks for future design. I guess, and then in my spare time, I do try to volunteer. I'm very committed to urban grasslands and prairies in Texas, and wanting to see that grow in terms of our understanding and implementation. So I spend time with the Native Prairie Association with Texas and some other nonprofits outside of the office. All right, Brianna, take it away.
Thanks, Claire. Hey, everyone. Sorry I jumped on late and really threw Katie into presentation mode. I was taking a call with a South Carolina representative, and it was just like, oh, I need to use his time while he's giving it to me. So my name is Brianna Fry. I'm a senior planner in the Austin office. I also am a School of Architecture UT grad. I participated in the CRP program, graduating in 2016. So I'm really happy to be here. I really value the relationship that we've continued to foster with the school. And my interests align with economic development and planning. And while at UT, really focused on transportation, and have completed a 180 away from that, but happy to provide insight as to why and when. And the last thing I'll say is my personal endeavors outside of the office include the local Austin Red Line Parkway Initiative. I'm on their board. I've been involved for about 4 years, and we're really picking up some steam and working with Cap Metro and the City of Austin and the surrounding communities that align along the Red Line. And I am also participate with the Women's Transportation Seminars local chapter. I'm their communications chair. So if you guys have any questions for the three of us about outside board work and volunteer work, I feel like we offer a lot of perspective on how to align your personal growth goals inside the office as well as outside the office. So I'll hand it back to Claire, and we're going to start our section of the presentation today where we'll each be talking about the 4 studios within our firm, landscape architecture. She'll also cover urban design, and she'll throw it back to me for planning, and then Katie will conclude with urban ecology.
Could I just, right before I forget, I meant to say this at the beginning, and thank you all so much for being here, but at the end, we are going to do breakout rooms. So if you could change your names to include either urban ecology, planning, or landscape architecture, so that way it'll make it easier when we move you guys at the end. All right, thanks.
Julie, does that apply to Katie, Brianna, and I as well? Okay.
No, we've got you covered.
Okay. Great. Well, so yeah, I get to talk about our landscape architecture studio for a bit this morning. Like I said, we're really focused on the implementation end of the lines of business that we practice at Asakura Robinson. But we still carry the same values of commitment to communities and high-performing landscapes. And often we strive to have low-impact design and sustainable features in every landscape that we work on. Oh, let's see, Katie, would you advance the slide? So the first project I'm going to share with you is the Austin State Hospital Brain Health Redesign, which is an updated way of describing a psychiatric facility. It's a 16-acre update to an 80-acre campus in North Central Austin with a long history of psychiatric care. We are part of this new facility, designing a large, all the exterior environment, including 12 therapeutic courtyards, which featured evidence-based design-driven programming, including spaces for occupational and behavioral therapy, therapeutic gardens, and outdoor recreation space for all the patients. I'm going to move to the next. St. Anthony Green Streets is a project in New Orleans, where I currently am. I'm here doing project work in New Orleans right now. So it is a project that began in our planning studio, which was wonderful because it was sort of instilled in those values that we've been talking about and had a lot of community engagement that we've been able to bridge into the landscape architecture process, moving towards implementation. We're now in 90% design. But it features 2 larger park spaces that incorporate green infrastructure into the recreation asks of the community. And we also are going to incorporate local artists' work into these park designs that are all expressions of both the community and this kind of stormwater process that we've been working through in the design. Okay, move forward. And then one on their campus, UT Austin, right off of Speedway, there's a small courtyard for the Anna Hiss Gymnasium building. I actually, even though I felt like I owned UT when I was there, I didn't spend much time in this space, but I hope you'll go and check it out. It's supposed to be finished this summer. We're working towards site certification, and it's going to feature a new commissioned artwork by Simone Lee, which you're seeing in the middle, called Sentinel Number 4. So we'll have a viewing space for that and flex seating, and the entire courtyard will be have infiltration and stormwater quality measures throughout. It'll be a neat space for the campus. And finally, the Mandel Community Park. It was an early project we got to do in Houston that took a small kind of empty lot and converted it into a community gathering space, as well as detailed community gardens. This has been a wonderful one for us because it came from the community, but we've been able to stay connected to them. And they have a strong management and ownership of this, and we've had a really great dialogue of seeing how it's evolved and been used over the years. And I think it's one we like to go back to quite a bit. All right, so our urban design studio responds to a lot of different scales, but it combines a lot of the values that we've been talking about, but looking at more of an urban system and transportation scale. And the project that I'm going to talk about today is the Brush Square Master Plan. It's one of the 4 historic squares in downtown Austin. You may be familiar. It's directly adjacent to the convention center. And that project had a lot of community development and community engagement, and looked at taking this underused park and really tying it into all of the urban elements within downtown, particularly an upgrade to our one red line transit in Austin, as well as some of the hotel and convention center programming and the some of the historic features that are on the park itself. Now we were awarded the contract to take this project to implementation. So we're currently in the construction document phase of phase 1, I believe looking at a 2022 completion date for the project.
Thanks, Claire. So I'll be taking over and highlighting some of our urban planning work. And I think what you'll hear a lot from the three of us is how well our studios work across each other. And planning is one of those that, we have our typical planning work that, we really specialize in, but we really do lean on our other studios to help us kind of add that extra flair, and honestly, why a lot of clients like to pursue our work. So the projects that I've selected today to present to you guys, I felt like were a really good example of the different scales in which we work. Planning is a really high level work product, but we do tend to get pretty street level as well. And so our studio hosts project portfolios like small area plans, and that includes downtown plans or neighborhood planning. And then strategic plans, which are more direct client working with visioning and organizational capacity. So for example, if a planning department wanted to conduct a strategic planning effort, we would help them with that. And it really, a lot of our other projects touch on everything from transportation, economic development to housing, all the way down to equity discussions and public engagement. So I think our planning level work is really all encompassing in what Asakura Robinson's vision and mission is. So the first I'll highlight today is the Deer Springs Livable Center study. It was our first project in the Las Vegas area in Nevada, which was really fun because it was a whole new urban and environmental space for us to work in. But the Livable Center model was taken from Atlanta, and we've at Asakura Robinson have been working extensively with Houston and Harris County on their livable centers. And so this was the first plan being done in the Nevada region. And it was conducted to, make long-range goals about how to grow an area of their community that was going to be adjacent to a high-capacity transit corridor. They were looking to make some land use and zoning changes and really think holistically about parks, circulation, and a development site that you can see in the upper right-hand corner that was going to turn into a management district. And so some of the other graphics you can see here is participating our urban design team and really helping us, create visuals that help the client understand where our recommendations were going. Next slide, please, Katie. This second project I thought was a good example of a smaller area plan. It's a linear corridor in Baton Rouge, and it's a historically African-American underinvested area that was going to also have a high capacity transit corridor funded at the time in recent years. So they really engaged us to, prioritize how can we reinvest in this community strategically and acknowledging the past infrastructure deficits, and really think about preservation and anti-displacement opportunities. And this was a fun client to work with because they were, I believe they were a redevelopment authority. So they had the capacity to own and redevelop sites. So we really helped envision and understand the market capacity to do so. So again, at a little bit of a smaller scale, but really like so many details to take into our analysis. And next slide, please. So the last one I wanted to show you guys was an example of some of our strategic work, our strategic planning work. And we've really been developing this side of our projects for some time now. And the city of Buffalo contracted us to help their redevelopment authority, or on here it says renewal agency. They're going through a rebranding process right now to really leverage federal dollars that they were streamlining through the city to invest in housing. And basically, they really didn't have a good relationship with their community development partners. They really didn't have good relationship with the public and where all of those dollars were being spent. And they really had some organizational capacity issues. So we were brought in. And if you think about the product here, you know, it was just really an organizational effort and not working directly with the community. So, and this has been something that I got to participate in and really enjoyed. So that's it for planning. And I'm going to pass it on to Katie to conclude the urban ecology.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. So Urban Ecology Studio isn't its own standalone thing. I have projects that Brianna has helped to lead or support, Claire has led and supported. The Urban Ecology Studio really is kind of an internal think tank that aims to integrate more data and science into our equity-driven practice. And I'm going to do my best to kind of explain across different scales how that's occurred in the past and also kind of who we've collaborated with. And so Julie, I was actually going to say, if there's only a handful of urban ecology people, if they lean more toward design scale, they could go to Claire's. If they lean more toward planning scale, they could go to Brianna's, and I could do half and half in each if that works better. If there's enough people who've already put urban ecology and we want to do our own thing, that is totally fine, but I just wanted to throw that out there. So we're really trying to do our best to not create any more internal silos, because I think even just in academia, we are already siloed, and in most professional practice, we're already siloed between design and planning, between science and research and the kind of applied practice that we lead. But really the goal of this studio and the goal of our practice as a whole really is to increase the ecological, economic, and sociocultural resiliency of the cities where we work. So the first project I'll talk about is Resilient Houston. Resilience planning historically has at least the connotation that it's just, we're talking about climate resilience. And what I love about the way we're doing resilience planning now is that it's much more holistic. So really we're looking at how we can think about social and cultural and historical and economic systems, all in concert with ecological and infrastructure systems. So Resilient Houston was an entire framework that looked that holistically, not just at climate, but at how different shocks and stressors. So for instance, yeah, Hurricane Harvey is a shock, but so is COVID. And that's an economic shock and a social shock. So how do those things impact the community in Houston, and how can this framework help communities in Houston to survive, adapt, and thrive? So not just how do we bounce back, how do we recover, but how do we back better? That's another important piece of this work. So we were a part of the team on creating this plan, and some of the heavy lifting we did was specifically around housing and social resilience. So Alex Miller, a managing principal in our New Orleans office, she and I team up often on this resilience work, and then I help to lead some of the environmental resilience sections, specifically looking at how kind of the green connective tissue of the city is helping to support all of those other systems that make a city resilient. And I'm going to yell at my dog really quick because she's whining, so just give me one. I'm so sorry, y'all.
Hey, no worries. We've actually had dogs snoring in the background before on presentations. It happens.
I have a little baby princess dog that doesn't like that her other mother just left. Sorry. All right, second project. So that first one, the scale of that, it addressed everything from like a family or a neighborhood scale all the way up to that region. The region is so important when we're thinking about resilience because all those systems are interacting. This is a city scale project. So this is a parks plan. We don't really do parks plans that are kind of a typical parks plan that you could pull from any city anywhere. They really just look at recreational assets and facilities and the way people use more traditional parks. We look at park systems as opportunities to improve health and equity and environment. So part of the way we do our park system planning is we often, if we have a client who can support this, do this thing called a suitability analysis, where we're basically running, and this is work that Brianna led for this project, actually. So we're looking at over 60 different variables across 4 different indices for this project. So we looked at socioeconomic vulnerability, we looked at environmental risk and vulnerability, existing park access and access to other community resources. And then we also looked at health disparities to try to understand where the city should make investments to have the most impact on health and equity and environment. And so we're able to have that geographic nature to making recommendations about parks investments, but then we also use evidence-based research to support the development of design guidelines. So now that you know where to invest to have the most impact, how do you invest based on the science to have the most impact across environmental, physical, and mental health? And then another key piece of this one is just how community-based it was. So we did a ton of different activities, and this one really, the first half of the project was pre-COVID, the end of the project was during COVID, and also pivoted to some really great engagement that happened virtually. We had this is a community in Houston, just east of Houston, that is predominantly Latinx and a large immigrant community. And I think our last event, we got a local Tejano DJ to like open up our virtual engagement event, and then also had such great engagement during that event, and even engagement that you wouldn't expect from virtual. Like some of the folks who you're like, I don't know if they're going to have access to this virtual platform. We actually had an entire senior center stream this on like their community center's TV. So we had an entire resident group as a part of that event as well. This is a lovely project that really touches on everything from that large scale all the way down to what does that mean for the design of a site. Healthy Places Toolkit. So this is one that we did with Episcopal Health Foundation. What's kind of unique about urban ecology work is sometimes we do work with cities where we go out to bid and get contracts with cities. Sometimes we'll do private work, but that's a little bit more rare. But we also do a lot of foundation funded work that really allows us to be pretty innovative. So Episcopal Health Foundation is a foundation that focuses on work in Southeast and Central Texas. And they have a program where they work with community clinics to provide support and advocacy around those clinics becoming more involved in the built environment. And so they wanted us to develop this toolkit to basically help new clinics and existing clinics in their program work upstream of the health outcomes that they're seeing once folks actually get to the clinic. So if a clinic wanted to start getting involved in food access and advocacy work, we basically frame up multiple different options that are really framed up along whether or not maybe they have a little lower capacity and they're just getting started in that work, or maybe they're a huge clinic with great funding and staff that does more community-oriented work. So we try to make sure that there's opportunities for accessing different types of advocacy around different topics. And this entire toolkit is set up around social determinants of health. So we talk about food, nature, air, access to housing, the right to live in a safe community, and what does that mean, especially through a justice framework. And I think the holistic nature of this and really trying to bring non-planners along into the planning and policy and built environment community is one of the reasons I love this project a lot. So this is one of my favorite. Williamson Creek Greenway Vision Plan is one I wanted to throw in here because Claire is leading this work, and I want to make sure she has a chance to add any detail that I've missed, but this is something that she and I are leading along with Carrie Spiegelhalter, who's also based in our Austin office, and it's a project that the Nature Conservancy received funding for through St. David's. And what was so compelling about this work is that obviously the Nature Conservancy really cares about urban nature and urban ecology and how we can create this really resilient ecological system in this place. But there had also been, along this section of Williamson Creek in South Austin, floodplain buyouts, a lot of community effort going into making sure that the re-envisioning of this green space is fully community driven. And that this doesn't just look like a standard design process where, you know, we say, all right, we'll go back to that black box of design after you tell us a few things you might want. We'll see in a few months. And what I think we really tried to do here is weave this framework that is driven by equity and community agency and process in a way that really democratized the way we designed this place with ecology and equity and community in mind. Claire, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think that's well said. I guess one of the things that we did is we developed sort of intensive backup material for all of the ideas that we heard from the community, and put into their hands sort of the criteria that we would think of if we were adding it to the site, and tried to have a fully transparent process where they were able to vote on those ideas with that information in mind. And it created a great conversation, and we just got a lot more out of the process, and ultimately a design that really matches their vision for the Greenway.
Thanks, Claire. All right, last one. I wanted to add this in here because it is one of the examples of a little more private focused work that we've done as a studio. So we were brought into the design team for the new stadium site in Austin, specifically to help TBG and Gensler think through sustainability and urban ecology on site. So we did some work at a design scale, looking at planting palettes for the site, specifically for the bioinfiltration pond that is at the southeast corner of the stadium. But actually ended up facilitating every conversation on sustainability with different city departments and community advocates with the design team. So everything from electric vehicle infrastructure to ecology and parks and recreation goals for the site. You know, one of the core goals that Austin FC has had for a long, long time has been, you know, that this site is activated 365 days a year. So, you know, the area around the site is functioning in a way that supports community park goals. In addition to kind of the special events and larger scale programming that's going to happen on this site. We had meetings with dark skies advocates on how the lighting on site would minimize light pollution, both for residents and the local ecology. And then we also had meetings on green infrastructure, on water quality, on how this pond is going to function. And those were some of the ones that got the most technical. But it's, at least for me, one of the coolest ones that I've done recently, because of being able to see this get built up at this scale in our city is just really interesting to see, after really starting in the conceptual phase and conversations around sustainability and site ecology. So I think that brings us to the end. Do we want to jump into I guess just a couple wrap up items, maybe, Julie, is we have internship postings that I believe are already up. And so just wanted to call that out. I think during any kind of posting that you might be interested in, you know, feel free to reach out if you all have any questions. If there aren't ever postings, if there's not a posting available, at least for me, I can say I'm always happy to chat with folks who are interested in talking more about your journey and about your path. I am happy to do that, and I'm sure Brianna and Claire are as well. So feel free to reach out anytime to us if questions don't get answered today, or if you want to chat more.